Hey guys, my name is Wildcard. This is a Super Rugby Reds versus Western Force Round 5 2021 game review. So, if you're a Western Force fan, you got to be pretty happy about this performance. The Western Force really put the Reds on the back foot for the entire game, and it looked like at times the Western Force was going to potentially beat the Reds. It looked pretty close. And as a Reds fan, you're going to be breathing a sigh of relief at the end of that to be able to pull out a win for the team. Now, this game has a few interesting things. There's Greg Holmes for his 150 Super Rugby game. He is currently playing as the tight head prop number 3 position for the Western Force. And he started his career with the Queensland Reds many years ago. And in 2011, he was actually in the Reds team that won the Super 14 championship at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. So Greg Holmes, the former Reds player, former Super 14 winner, coming back home for his 150 test cap. Now, there's another player, actually, that no one mentioned, who also played in that 2011 Super Rugby Finals against the Crusaders for the Queensland Reds for the championship, who is also in the Western Force team, and that person is Ian Pryor. Ian Pryor was on the bench in the grand final for that famous Queensland Reds Super 14 title win. He came onto the field maybe less than 10 minutes to replace Will Guinea. And the two players that has won Super 14 titles for the Reds are both playing for the Western Force today. So yeah, it's a little bit interesting fact. And another thing that's kind of interesting, the only other player that was in that game, is Brad Thorne, the current Reds coach, and he was in the Crusader team who lost the match. So the Reds coach was there. Greg Holmes was there. Ian Pryor was there. And nobody in the current Reds team was in that match. James O'Connor was out of the Reds team at that point. He could have had a chance to win the Super Rugby title, but he was out of the Reds team at that point. So he didn't get a chance to win the Super Rugby title. And the only Reds players who's won Super Rugby are playing for the Western Force. So that's a little bit of fun fact before the game. So let's have a look at the stats for the game, overall, the Reds had a lot of opportunities to win the game and to take points. And it was a little bit frustrating to watch. It's probably a strategic decision for the Reds at times to make some of the plays that they wanted to. They made a lot of the plays that you look like they made them for practice, and not actually something that was calculated to score a try. So James O'Connor in the first half, grubber kicked away try to grubber kick so many times that was he was just literally throwing possessions away. Especially it was, the Reds were applying pressure. The Reds was 20-25 meters out from the try line, and James O'Connor just grubber kicks the ball and it goes out to the sideline. It just didn't look like a smart decision from the Reds' part. My guess is that they did that to prepare themselves for a play in the future, considering they're against the Western Force. But yes, things like that could have cost them the game. They just, throwing away opportunities for practice is not really that good. Especially when I haven't seen the Reds make these grubber kicks, that often. I don't think they've done that at all I can't remember in this season. So I don't know why they started doing that against Western Force today. So that was one thing that the Reds really kind of stuck out. That was a big issue from the Reds. And another thing the Western Force did really, really well is to neutralize the Reds scrum. The Reds had a huge advantage in their previous games with their scrums. And a lot of times the Reds were able to just get out of jail with the scrum penalty. So, if the opposition drops the ball, or if you drop the ball, and then the opposition has a scrum feed, you just kind of get the ball back with Tupou at the scrum, and then it's just like get out of jail card, right? So the fact that Western Force were able to neutralize that scrum means that the Reds had a lot of their mistakes were punished. That was not punished in their previous games. They weren't able to just get out of jail for it. So let's have a look at the stats. Run meters, the Reds had 319 to Western Force 223, and the main thing about this is the carries. The Reds had 84 carries to Western Force 93 and had way higher run meters. And one of the reasons that this was happening was the Reds were able to get all the clean breaks and a lot of offloads from those clean breaks. So Jordan Pryor had made a lot of really good runs this game, where he was able to just take on two defenders and free his arm out and throw the ball over the top. In fact, one of the tries that was set up in just with Pryor, where he threw the ball over, and he almost set up another try, but it was disallowed due to a knock on. But the offload game from the Reds were just spectacular, and in terms of defense, the Reds made 166 tackles to Western Force 94. The Reds has much higher tackle success rate, and the Western Force defense is a little bit lacking, which also explain why there was so many offloads and clean breaks for the Reds, because the missed tackle count for Western Force is a little bit high. Now, what really hurt the Reds this game is once again their penalty conceded. 15 penalties to 7. So the Reds conceded, I think, 3 penalties from memory, if not more, from just high tackles. Luckily, no one had got a yellow card, but just technique issues. And I mean, there were a couple of high tackles where it's kind of like unavoidable, as the player was falling over or something, and it would just kind of fell into the tackle. But still, the discipline is a big issue, especially when high tackles involved. You could easily see a yellow card or potentially a red card for that matter, and that would be something that the Reds do not want to deal with. So overall, the Reds had a much better running game, but they really squandered a lot of their opportunities with just kicks that I didn't quite understand. And also their penalty count was really hurting them. So in terms of the actual, let's have a look at the actual, let's have a look at what happened in the actual game. The game kind of started off with the Reds taking the kind of back and forward, and the Reds were attacking, and this is where the Reds were able to apply a lot of pressure at the start of the game. Around 9 minutes into the game, the first try was scored by the Reds. McDermott scores a try. The Reds were applying a lot of pressure, and there was a scrum, Red scrum, and this is the scrum where Reds really dominated, kind of like what the Reds kind of came out with the mentality that they're going to dominate every scrum, to the point where the Reds had a full-on penalty right in front of the goalpost. Instead of opting for a line-out or 3 points, the Reds opted for a scrum. And this is the only scrum that paid off for the Reds. For the rest of the game, the Western Force were able to neutralize the Red scrum, and at times putting pressure on the Red scrums, and looking like penalties were going to be given out. But in fact, the Western Force did force penalties out of the Red scrum later on in the game. But this scrum, the Reds really dominated, and the ball went to the number 8, and they just kind of pushed the scrum forward, and the number 8 just had the Harry Wilson for the Reds just had the ball by his foot, and then the referee gave it the full-on penalty as the Western Force scrum falls apart. Wilson picks the ball up, passes to McDermott, and McDermott kind of like looks around and he sees the Western Force number 10, Jake McIntyre, on his right and on the blind side. So McDermott just runs straight at him, did a bit of a step, just breaks the tackle, runs straight through. Thomas Kubeli, the number 9 for Western Force, was also there and tried to make a cover tackle. He grabs McDermott by the waist, but McDermott was just, too pumped, too strong, crashes over for the line. So that was the first try for the Queensland Reds. James O'Connor managed to convert the try. The score is now 7-0. And then 5 minutes later, the Reds gave away a penalty. McIntyre converts a penalty. Western Force comes back 3 points to 7 at the 14-minute mark. And then the Reds, every time the Western Force scored, the Reds did look like they wanted to make a comeback and score back. So I think right from the kickoff, the Reds were able to recover the ball, and there was a ruck around just outside the 22-minute mark on the Western Force side, and Paisami was there as the first receiver, and McDermott passed. Was the halfback? He picked the ball. I think it might be another player in the middle. The ball went to Paisami, and this is a little bit controversial for this try. So there was like the 10 and 12 channel for the Western Force on the side, and Paisami was running through this 2 players, and the referee was standing in the middle of the 2 players. So Paisami, as he was running through, the referee blocked one of the players from being able to close the gap. So one of the players was just bumping the referee, and Paisami just ran through the other player. I mean, the other player should be able to tackle him, but it was a bit of a mismatch because there was 2 forwards in these 2 channels, which they're not supposed to be there, and I guess Paisami spotted the mismatch and just ran straight through. And at this point, he kind of ran past, and then he got to the line. Instead of sliding in the try zone for the finish, he kind of stops at this, and he turns around and he sees the fullback coming in to make a tackle. And Paisami just palmed. He literally turned around, kind of backpedaling into the try zone, and palmed him as he was coming in. Just give him another palm, a stiff arm to the chest, and then he puts the ball down. It was actually a little bit funny to watch. He just looked so he looked like he didn't even want to score a try. He looked like he was out looking for a fight. He just looking for people to sticking his palm in front of, and it was just I don't know. He just looked so pumped. It was actually a little bit funny. It was really weird to watch because he was through, and he was clear, and he was clear able to score the try. And he just stops, turns around, palms another defender before he puts the ball down. It was quite a show of athleticism for him. James O'Connor converts the try, 14 points to 3 for the Western Force. And then the Western Force strikes back right away. Reds gave away penalties again, straight off on the kickoff. Western Force were able to get a line-out to come in and then apply a lot of pressure to the Reds in center fields with their forwards. Eventually, Kaitu crashes over for the try for the Reds, the hooker. Just pick and drive. Eventually, he was able to crash over for the try for the Western Force. There was, it looked like he was a bit short, but he kind of stretched his body out and went over the try line. They had to look at a video replay to see whether he scored or not. And then they saw him ground the ball, and the referee's on-field decision was that he scored a try. So yes, that was the only try that was scored by the Western Force. And from there onwards, Western Force only scored with penalties. As you can see that the Reds gave away a lot of penalties this game. So Kaitu scores a try. McIntyre converts it. Score is now 10 points to 14. And just before halftime, the Reds... during this period, this is where the Reds start doing these weird grubber kicks. Like, the Reds had so many opportunities to take points. They just opted for grubber kicks for some reason. Like, James O'Connor, there wasn't even a penalty advantage. So James O'Connor just grubber kicks, and then he would go out from the sideline. And the Reds lineout weren't good enough to actually steal the lineouts from the Western Force. So it was just they were just literally kicking the territories away, possessions away. Especially when a lot of these kicks were done just outside the Western Force 22. So they were in pretty good attacking position. So it was a bit baffling to watch. Anyway, just before halftime, the Reds gave away another penalty. McIntyre converts. Going into halftime, 14 points to 13. If you're a Reds fan, you will be a little bit sweaty at the moment. You'll be, your palms will be a little bit sweaty because you were expecting to win a lot, especially considering every team that played the Western Force, except for the Waratahs, pretty much blew out the Western Force by not a blowout. The Brumbies blew out the Western Force, but all the Western Force look like a bit of pushover. But this game, the Western Force really, really stepped up. Their set piece play were pretty good. They didn't make silly mistakes. The discipline was pretty good. Their defense was what's letting them down a bit. But yeah, going half time, 14 points to 13. You'd be pretty happy as a Western Force fan. There was a halftime interview with Brad Thorne, who looked a bit tense. The Reds coach looked like he was under a bit of pressure, looking like the Reds going to lose at home for losing their winning streak against the Western Force, who are a big underdogs. So second half started, the game got underway, and the first team to score is the Western Force. So Western Force had a penalty at the 50-minute mark where they converted with McIntyre, and the Western Force actually took the lead with this penalty with a 2-point lead. So as a Reds fan, you are a little bit like, what are we doing here? Why are we making silly mistakes, giving away silly penalties? And I believe this was a high shot too. So it was really sketchy. The Force took the lead the first time in this game against the Reds at 55 minutes. At the 50 minutes. But the Reds, and you can see at this point, the Reds are really, really frustrated, right? Especially Tupou. Tupou looked like he was angry. The Tongan Thor himself looked like he was really, really angry. So there was the Western Force. I think there was a scrum inside the Western Force half where they secured the ball, and the Western Force ran the ball. They got tackled, and there was a rock, and Tupou just like jammed himself into the rock, and there was like he literally ran into like 3 people in the rock, and the Western Force just stopped him from counter-rocking the ball. And the Western Force, instead of kicking the ball out, they try to like run the ball, try to set the ball up again with their forwards. So they ran the ball again, got tackled, and you can see it. Tupou just sitting there, looking at the forwards, like secure, like over the ball, like they're just fresh meat, right? Like Tupou looked angry, looked like he was out to eat people. And the Western, there was I think at least 2 or Western Force forwards over the ball, fully secured, and the halfback is at the back getting ready to take the ball out. And Tupou just bulldozer himself through the middle of the ruck, counter rucks, just blow the two forwards out of the way and grab the ball and just turn the ball over for the Reds. Absolutely amazing, sheer, great grit and determination. Tupou, he is the thunder god, right? He just cracked through this breakdown and stole the ball for the Reds single-handedly. And it wasn't even like one of those things where there was a lot of people contesting. There was people the ruck was set. There was two people from the force secured over the ball. They're just waiting for the ball to get passed out by the halfback. Doesn't matter. The Tongan Thor strikes and he takes him out. He just runs in and takes him out low and just takes out two people in the ruck and gets a turnover. And as soon as the ball turned over, Tate McDermott passed the ball to Paisami. He got the ball, Paisami. He did a dummy. The defender completely got sold, and he just ran straight through the defense. There was no one at fullback. Just beautiful, beautiful run by Paisami. Try time for the Reds. Man, you can see it. When the Reds fell behind, man, Tupou was really, really out, angry, and he was out for blood. She was like, I am not losing this game. I am not losing to the Western Force. Man, single-handedly turned the ball over. And then Paisami just went, nah, I'm scoring this try. I don't care. Threw a dummy pass. Straight through the defensive line. Try time. Second try for the night. Second try for him for the season. What a great play from the Reds. And this is where James O'Connor's conversion missed. So the Reds were only leading by... So the Reds were down by 2. So they were only leading by 3 at this point. So the Reds were leading by 3 at 19 points to 16. And a few minutes later, the Reds gave away another penalty. Despite their brilliant tries and, sheer grit and determination from Tupou, they just throw away another 3 points to the Western Force. Only 3 minutes later. And the score is now 19 points to 19. And both teams are bringing on their reserves. The Reds, Paisami went off. The reserve props came on. The reserve hooker came on. James O'Connor moved into fullback with Bryce Hegarty at number 10. So, yes, now the game is kind of... As a Reds fan, you're like, oh, come on. You're taking off some of the best players like Paisami. And the game is very tight. It's going to be... It's going to be really close. And surely it was close. A few minutes later, Jack Campbell scores a try for the Reds. And this is where one of those things, another brilliant individual performance setting up this try. It was Vinovalu. He just carves. There was a Reds play, and he kind of got a ball and he ran just a beautiful line around the rocks. Again, close to the rocks. He ran. The defenders around the rocks weren't paying attention, I guess. He ran through the rocks. One of the defenders came out to tackle him. He just stiffed armed him. Just palmed him in the chest. Just tossed him to the ground with one hand, basically. And then, he just looked like nobody was going to stop him. He ran, and the fullbacks kind of swept out on him. He realized there was 2 people outside of him that was free. Through the offload, he didn't have to risk getting tackled. Even though he looked like he wasn't going to get tackled. He wasn't going to get tackled by anybody. He threw the pass to Campbell, who just got the ball, nobody in front of him, dot the ball down, try time for the Reds at 66 minute mark. O'Connor converts this one, so the Reds are now leading by 7, 26 points to 19. Now, for the last 10 minutes, the Western Force really tried to hammer home and try to level the score. There was the Reds again gave away penalties that they really shouldn't be giving away. The Western Force squandered a couple opportunities. You know, the Reds had a few really good turnovers, and then then they just like threw it away with the penalty. You know, it's just something that really has hurt the Reds, not just for this game, but for a number of the games. In fact, for pretty much every game this season, they've hurt themselves a lot with their penalties. And about 30 seconds left, it looked like the Western Force was going to score a try. So they had another penalty where the Tupou and Pryor sandwiched McIntyre, and it looked like McIntyre like twisted his leg. He looked like he was a lot of pain on the ground with his leg, and Pryor, as he was going down, Pryor kind of hit him in the head with his shoulder. But the video referee reviewed said that Pryor was going for a tackle, and McIntyre was falling down, and he kind of fell onto Pryor's shoulder, so he wasn't like. It wasn't an intentional. It was like an accidental shoulder shot, so he didn't get a yellow card. But that I've seen games where that would have been a yellow card, maybe even red card, because he looked pretty horrendous. But anyway, the Western Force. It looked like McIntyre was okay, so he didn't look like he managed to play on, get up and play on. And then the Western Force had a line out, did a maul, and the Reds stopped the maul. It didn't go anywhere. And then it was looking like the Western Force gonna score to try and level the game. They were just pushing with their forwards, getting really close to the goal line, right in front of the goal post. And the man of the hour, Brendan Pangamosa, I think that's pronounced his name. Pangamosa, the reserve hooker coming onto the field, makes the tackle, seals the ball. The Western Force could not get the ball back. Full-on penalty, turnover for the Reds, and game over for the Western Force. If you're a Western Force fan, you gotta be pretty happy with that performance. There were, a lot of talks that the Western Force is kind of like a free wing for the competition, but it's really exciting to see that how competitive they are coming into the. I can totally see the Western Force potentially beating the Rebels in their next match. And maybe, with a performance like this, they may give some trouble to the Brumbies. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to beat the Brumbies, but I think they might give Brumbies a good run for their money. So it's really good to see the Western Force lifting their games, improving. And yes, the Reds have a lot of work to do to make sure that they don't give away stupid penalties coming into the second half of the season, going into the final championship rounds. So yeah, that is the review, guys. Hopefully you enjoy that, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.